You have spent your entire life trying to avoid physical pain. You wince when you touch something hot, you pull back from sharp edges before you consciously decide to. You reach for painkillers when your back aches, your head throbs, your muscles burn. Pain feels like a design flaw, an unnecessary cruelty baked into the machinery of being alive. But there are people walking the earth right now who cannot feel physical pain at all. Not a reduced sensitivity, not a high threshold, nothing. Not a pinprick, not a shattered bone, not a hand held flat against a burning stove. You would assume this is a superpower. It is not. Children born without pain routinely bite off pieces of their own tongues before they learn to speak. They walk on fractured ankles for weeks without knowing anything is wrong. Most are confined to wheelchairs before the age of 30 from joint damage their bodies never warned them about. Pain is not your enemy. It is the only reason your body is still intact. The medical term is congenital insensitivity to pain, abbreviated CIP. It is not a psychological condition, not extreme stoicism, and not a learned behavior. It is the complete physical absence of the molecular machinery that detects tissue damage and converts it into a nerve signal. Ashlyn Blocker was born in 1999 in Patterson, Georgia. At 4 months old, her parents noticed she never cried. Not from hunger, not from discomfort, not from anything. At 2 years old, she placed both hands into a pot of boiling water and watched the water bubble around her skin without reacting. She chewed through her own lips and tongue in infancy, before her parents had any framework for what was happening. Every new tooth was a fresh threat. She would work through her own gum tissue with no distress signal to stop her. Her parents taped her mouth shut at night to prevent her from biting herself in her sleep. By the time she started school, she had already undergone multiple surgeries to repair wounds she had never felt. Gabby Gingras was born in Minnesota in 2001. She scratched her own corneas repeatedly because she felt only pressure, no pain. By the time she was 3 years old, doctors removed both of her eyes to prevent the damage from continuing. She had rendered herself permanently blind through injuries she never once experienced as injuries. Steve Pete from Washington State has broken virtually every bone in his body at least once. He has suffered internal injuries that went undetected for days because his nervous system never generated a distress signal. He has described discovering a broken bone by noticing that the limb was at an angle limbs are not supposed to be at, not because it hurt, but because it looked wrong. There are several hundred documented CIP patients worldwide, though the actual number is believed to be much higher. Many die in childhood before a correct diagnosis is made. To understand why CIP is catastrophic, you need to understand what pain actually is. Pain begins with specialized sensory neurons called nociceptors, distributed throughout your skin, muscles, joints, and internal organs. Nociceptors are active detectors tuned to specific categories of stimulation: extreme temperature, mechanical deformation, and chemical signals released by injured or inflamed cells. There are two primary types of pain-carrying nerve fibers. A-delta fibers are myelinated, insulated with a fatty sheath that speeds transmission, and carry sharp, immediate signals at up to 40 meters per second. This is the sensation you experience in the first fraction of a second when you touch something dangerous, the fast signal that moves your hand before your conscious mind has registered what happened. C fibers are unmyelinated and slow, conducting at roughly 2 meters per second, carrying the dull, diffuse, throbbing pain that persists after the initial sharp signal fades. This sustained signal serves a distinct purpose. It enforces rest, protection, and behavioral change over hours or days. The genetic cause of most CIP cases was identified in a landmark 2006 paper published in the journal Nature. C. Jeffrey Woods and his team at Cambridge University examined 6 consanguineous families in northern Pakistan, multiple generations of close relatives, all of whom consistently produced children with complete pain insensitivity. The common factor was a loss-of-function mutation in a single gene, SCN9A. SCN9A encodes a protein called NaV1.7, a voltage-gated sodium channel expressed almost exclusively in nociceptors and olfactory sensory neurons. When a nociceptor encounters a harmful stimulus, NaV1.7 opens, allowing sodium ions to rush into the cell interior. This rapid influx of charge creates an action potential, a brief electrical pulse that propagates down the nerve fiber toward the spinal cord. In CIP patients with SCN9A mutations, NaV1.7 is either absent or non-functional. The nociceptors are present and structurally intact. They detect the stimulus, but no action potential is generated. The message is written, but the electrical system that would transmit it does not exist. In a functioning nervous system, the action potential travels along peripheral nerve fibers to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. At the dorsal horn, it synapses with second-order neurons that carry the signal upward through the spinal cord to the brainstem. From the brainstem, the signal reaches the thalamus, the brain's primary sensory relay station. The thalamus distributes the signal to multiple cortical regions simultaneously. The primary somatosensory cortex processes the location and intensity of the sensation. The anterior cingulate cortex processes the emotional dimension, the suffering, the urgency, the overwhelming need for the sensation to stop. Pain is not a single alarm. It is a coordinated broadcast across multiple brain regions, each contributing a different layer of meaning to the raw signal. In CIP patients, none of this ever occurs. There is a related but distinct condition called CIPA, congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis. CIPA results from mutations in the NTRK1 gene, which encodes a receptor for nerve growth factor essential for the development of sympathetic neurons during fetal development. Without functioning NTRK1 receptors, these neurons fail to form, leaving CIPA patients not only without pain sensation, but also unable to sweat. The inability to sweat is an independent catastrophe. Human body temperature regulation depends almost entirely on sweat evaporation, meaning CIPA patients can develop lethal hyperthermia from mild physical activity in warm conditions. Some CIPA patients have died from heat-related causes during ordinary childhood activities. Their parents must control the temperature of every environment they enter, not for comfort, but for survival. The SCN9A gene can also produce the precise opposite of CIP. Where CIP results from loss of function mutations, channels that fail to open, a different class of SCN9A mutations causes the channels to activate too easily, too frequently, and remain open too long. The result is a condition called primary erythromelalgia, known colloquially as the man-on-fire disease. Patients experience unpredictable episodes of excruciating burning pain across their extremities, particularly the hands and feet, that can last hours or days. Patients submerge their limbs in ice water for extended periods. Some have wrapped their feet in wet towels and placed them in freezers. Some have been found unconscious in ice-filled bathtubs. One mutation on the SCN9A gene silences the channel entirely, no pain. A different mutation on the same gene opens the channel permanently, nothing but pain. The identification of NaV1.7 appeared to offer an obvious path to a new class of painkillers. Block NaV1.7 selectively in peripheral nociceptors, the reasoning went, and you eliminate pain at its source without affecting the central nervous system. Unlike opioids, which suppress activity across the brain and carry catastrophic risks of dependence and overdose, a NaV1.7 blocker would act cleanly and peripherally. Multiple major pharmaceutical companies initiated NaV1.7 drug programs. The results were largely disappointing. NaV1.7 is also expressed in olfactory sensory neurons, the cells responsible for the sense of smell. Clinical trial participants who received NaV1.7 blockers lost their sense of smell entirely. This connected to a detail buried in the CIP literature. A significant proportion of SCN9A mutant patients also have little or no sense of smell. The same channel that enables pain signaling enables olfaction, and blocking one blocks both. Stephen Waxman at Yale University School of Medicine has published extensively on sodium channel biology and its implications for pain medicine. The science is advancing, but the biology keeps proving more entangled than anticipated. The evolutionary argument for pain requires almost no elaboration. Pain is not a flaw in the design, it is one of the design's most essential components. Every painful experience you have ever had modified your behavior. You learned which surfaces were dangerous, which activities caused injury, which sensations demanded immediate attention. Children without pain do not learn that fire is dangerous, because fire does not hurt them. They do not learn that biting through their own tissue is dangerous, because biting does not hurt them. Every warning that pain would have delivered must instead be delivered by a human being watching every second. And that cannot be sustained. Engineers describe pain the way they describe a thermostat or a pressure relief valve, as a feedback controller. In cybernetics, a feedback system monitors a variable, detects when it deviates from its acceptable range, and generates a corrective signal. Pain is the corrective signal for the body's physical integrity. Tissue damage, joint overload, dangerous internal pressure, each deviation triggers a signal that compels corrective behavior. Withdraw, protect the area, rest, seek care. John Wood and his team at University College London have formally argued that the nociceptive system should be understood as a homeostatic regulator, not a passive alarm, but an active participant in maintaining the body's structural integrity over time. Without it, the body has no mechanism to enforce its own limits. It accumulates damage silently, without urgency, without the corrective impulse that would stop it, without any signal that something irreplaceable is being destroyed. The life expectancy of most CIP patients is significantly reduced. The majority die before the age of 30 from infections or injuries that were never flagged as emergencies by their nervous systems. Those who survive longer do so through extraordinary external support, parents, caregivers, and medical teams who serve as the pain system the body lacks. Ashlyn Blocker has reached her mid-20s in part because her parents recognized her condition in infancy and built a comprehensive protection system around her. But even with the most vigilant care imaginable, the body continues to accumulate damage that pain would have prevented. There is no external system that can fully replace a real-time nociceptive signal. Here is what all of this means for the pain you felt this week. The headache you medicated. The back that ached after sitting too long. The sharp sting when you cut your finger. Each of those sensations was your body performing one of its most sophisticated and critical biological functions. It was detecting a deviation from normal operating parameters and generating a signal precise enough to tell you what was wrong, where it was, and how urgently you needed to respond. You interpreted that signal as suffering. It was, in fact, information. The suffering is the price of the information, and every person who has ever lived with CIP would tell you it is a price worth paying. Gabby Gingras, who lost both eyes to injuries she never felt, has spoken publicly about what it means to grow up without pain. She has described watching other children cry when they fall and feeling something she can only call envy. Not for the pain, for what the pain means. It means the body is talking. It means the system is working. It means something inside you cares whether you survive. There is a biological intelligence embedded in every moment of discomfort you have ever experienced. Every wince, every flinch, every moment you held still because something hurt. Your body was enforcing the limits that keep you alive. Pain is not the opposite of health. Pain is a guardian, silent, tireless, and working every second you exist, asking only that you listen. The next time it speaks, you might consider thanking it.